Our thanks to you. I do want to bring in the panel right now. Matt Makoviak, Republican strategist, and Danielle Moodie-Mills, the host of SiriusXM's Woke AF, also the co-host, by the way, of the great podcast, Democracy-ish. Listened to it just this past week. Loved it. All right, so Danielle, Bernie Sanders right there, trying to put out his criminal justice reform plan and a big plan to try to get black supporters doing more so, they say, than he did back when he ran last time. Will it work?
I'm unclear of whether it'll work or not, because right now you have Elizabeth Warren, who is really eating into the supporters that had backed Bernie back in 2016, when it was just a field of two. Now they have a lot more choices, and Elizabeth Warren is surging, as we were saying. I think that Bernie Sanders rolling out this criminal justice plan matters because he was one of the senators that voted for the 1994 crime bill that Biden has embraced as the Biden bill and now is trying to back away from. And so I think that it's important for him to show that he recognizes that there is a criminal justice system problem in this country that crime bill created, that he supported, and that he needs to figure out what should be done in order to, one, bring down the numbers of black and brown folks that are incarcerated, change the policies that created mandatory minimum sentencing for low-level infractions. He still has a pretty good
civil rights history. He was marching well before many.
Yes, and whenever asked about civil rights, he always talks about marching with Martin Luther King Jr., which is fantastic.
There were people who weren't.
But if that's what you're reaching for and you don't have anything to show for in the decades after that, then I find a problem with it.
Okay, valid point. Matt, our new NBC News, Wall Street Journal polling shows that Americans are actually split on a very important issue for the president, the economy and his handling of the economy. You think as the president and his advisors are looking at all of the data that came out of our poll earlier today, this is the one thing that they're probably most worried about?
Well, I mean, the economy has been one of the strongest selling points that Trump has had, and that I think he wants to use for his reelection. And there are some signs that we may be seeing a slowdown. You saw, I think, two top advisors just this morning on the Sunday shows making the argument that the economy remains strong and that there are likely factors both domestically and internationally that may continue to keep it strong through the 2020 calendar year. But look, if the economy were to weaken, it would weaken the economic argument that Trump can make for re-election in 2020. And so, you know, I think he needs to be wary of that. He's generally gotten better marks from the public on the economy than he has on any other issue, and than he has generally in terms of his job approval. So it's been his area of strength. I think if you look at the 500,000 manufacturing jobs that have been brought back, historically low unemployment, both nationally and for important groups like African Americans and Hispanic Americans, he's got some good arguments to make, but we need to keep the economy strong for the next year and a half to give him the best chance possible for re-election. And
that's why the president is probably looking at those numbers and thinking that he definitely has to try and keep the economy strong. Former Vice President, in the meantime, Joe Biden, has consistently held the front-runner status, as you guys know. Let's take a look at the numbers that we have from our poll as well, showing his favorability, taking a bit of a hit. Does this make him a little bit vulnerable, I should say, heading into the next debate?
Yeah, I think that it does make him vulnerable. You know, Joe Biden, this is his third time at the race running for president. And what we see is that he always comes out strong and people recognize his name and then he piddles out. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now. And I'm concerned about it because he's being labeled as the front runner. And I think that Joe Biden is piddling out because he still today, he was talking about there's an awful lot of good Republicans out there for him to work across the aisle with. And I'm like, sir, have you not been paying attention that Republicans don't want to work with you? So I'm very concerned about his understanding of the political climate right now. And I think that that is what the poll numbers are showing, that people are also concerned about his perception of where we are politically right now.
Matt, at this point, is there really a front runner? We're about 160 plus days out from Iowa.
Yeah, look, Biden is the front runner, but he's a weak front runner. I think one of the advantages he has is he is really competing in the mainstream wing of the party and really competing for moderate and independent Democratic primary voters. And he's got that wing entirely to himself, while Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Kamala Harris are all competing on the progressive, left wing of the party. And so they're dividing that vote up. Look, Warren is rising at Bernie Sanders' expense. Biden has been pretty solid at the top, but I don't think he's in a strong position. I think there's a good chance Elizabeth Warren could win Iowa and New Hampshire and become the front runner if that were to happen. So Biden's got to get through these next few months, two more rounds of debates in September and October, and we'll see where it's going at that point.
Yeah, it shapes up for South Carolina, Matt, and Danielle, to be a real firewall. So who, in essence, has the advantage there, Danielle?
Right
at this
now,
point.
At this point, and it's still incredibly early, I think that Elizabeth Warren has the momentum, and I think that her momentum will continue. She has the plans. She's the only candidate in the race right now who hasn't seen a slip in her numbers. She has been on the steady incline, and I think that that is going to continue. She has been, doggedly pursuing the African-American vote and going after black women who are the base of the Democratic Party with a myriad of plans, from closing the racial wealth gap to black women's maternal mortality rate, and on and on and on. And so I think that she's going to be the person to watch as we count down.
All right, but there's plenty of time indeed. Thanks to Matt and Danielle. Do stick around with us. Recess rallies, as they're being called, are all across the country, hoping to pressure lawmakers to address the gun issue sooner rather than later. One happening right now in New York City. That's where NBC's Chris Pallone joins us live. Chris, what's the